Welcome to the Kickstart My Franchise podcast. I'm your host, Tim Michaels. Today's guest spent a portion of his career in private equity and launched and scaled a fully remote cleaning brand called MaidThis, of which he is currently the CEO. We're very excited to have Neel Parekh joining us today. How are you doing, Neel?
Thanks so much, Tim. Excited to be here. I'm doing well.
So what country are you in today? I'm always seeing your updates on Twitter.
Yeah, I just got back from Thailand. I was traveling for 7 years now. I have a proper apartment in LA now, which feels kind of weird because it's like here's furniture and like a lease, and it's just very not normal. But it
Yeah.
feels kind of nice to have a home base now, which is cool. So I was in Thailand, just got back, and battling jet lag.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, I feel like that would be disorienting just like being traveling for 7 years, but it sounds awesome at the same time. So
Yeah, no, it's. I figured out a way to make it work a little bit better, where it's not vacation. It's like staying in a spot for quite a while and kind of building friendships and different experiences there. So makes it more manageable for sure.
so I think the obvious question is like, how are you able to do this? How are you able to travel so much while running this business? Maybe you can explain to us like what made this is and why
hmm
it allows you to do this.
Yeah, and like honestly, I stumbled into this. It was not something where I had this grand vision of what I was doing. So I was working in finance back in the day. Uh, you know, Same type of thing where you're working in a cubicle, crushing Excel. Like I'm sure Tim, you're very familiar with this type of stuff too.
Oh yeah.
Um, so I was doing that, and I wanted some sort of side hustle to escape. And so I came across a different post online, found someone who started a cleaning company, and thought, you know what the heck, let me give this a shot as well. And it started working. And in hindsight, now the reason I figured out why it worked is you're competing against a very unsophisticated competitor. A local cleaning company in your local market doesn't really know what they're doing with marketing, doesn't know what they're doing with operations. Most of them are not actually picking up the phone. So I wanted to go remote, and before I was looking at e-commerce and all this like traditional remote business. And when I realized like, oh wow, this market of cleaning companies, home services is super uncompetitive, then I kind of figured, how do I actually make this thing remote? And it took me a while to figure out how to do this. But finally, in 2015 is when I quit that job. I booked a one-way flight down to South America, and I started traveling. And I thought I'd travel for a year, ended up becoming 7 years. But the reality is there's a lot of ways you could run this business remote, um, which is what I call kind of the remote local method. And that's what the franchise is based on now.
Yeah, I mean, that's fantastic. Obviously very attractive for a lot of reasons. Can you talk to us a little bit about, what is needed as far as employees? Like, um, you know, is there any equipment? Like, what does that
Mhm.
all look like?
Yeah, absolutely. So most franchisees who signed up, they don't want to travel and go nomad. That's not their case. They want to escape the 9 to 5. And the cool part about the franchise is that we actually allow them to do it as a side hustle, kind of like I did, until they make enough money and hit their freedom number, and when they finally quit to do this full time. So that's the path we put most franchisees on: is how do we get you to quit your 9 to 5 as fast as possible, and you're allowed to do this as a side hustle. The way you're able to run this business as a side hustle is because the cleaners, go straight from their home to the job site. If you
Mm,
think about traditional local business system, like back in the day, you'd have people go into an office, you had vehicles and wraps and equipment, and like all this stuff existed because scheduling tools weren't great, communication wasn't great, so you had to have this stuff. And what
mhm.
I've realized is a lot of franchises still operate in the same way when they started, which is like the 90s or early 2000s. Technology has moved so fast nowadays that you really don't need an office space. That's just kind of a waste of money in my mind.
Mhm.
So cleaners go straight from their home to the job site. All the things are done via phone call, online systems, automation, so that way you can run it from your cubicle at work if you have some spare time, or from Thailand if you'd like.
Yeah, fantastic. How long does it take? Like, let's say I sign up, I become a franchisee. Like, how long does it actually take to like get this going?
So we put you through MaidThis University, which is an 8-week training program. It's part-time around your schedule, usually like a couple hours of live training, and then it will be a check-in call and some actions to do in between them. So that's 8 weeks, and you'll probably launch around week 6 to 8. Now, after launching, a lot of it kind of depends on you. How much time do you actually have to devote to this? How fast can you grow? We drop you into what we call the 10K program. So right when you start, um, you get dropped to a mastermind group where the biggest question we're trying to answer is, how do we get you to $10,000 per month in revenue as fast as possible? And there's exact tactics that we have laid out. You just follow the plan, follow the script to get there. And everyone has a different freedom number, Tim. And a freedom number to me means, what is that number where your basic living expenses are covered? We could finally say, forget you, boss. Like, I don't really need this raise anymore. I could do whatever I want, right? At least you have some optionality. We're trying to get people to that freedom number as fast as possible. Then they can finally quit and do what they want. So to answer your question, 8 weeks is probably the amount to get started after training. And then how fast you reach your freedom number kind of depends on you.
I love that term, like freedom number. I don't know that I've heard that before, but that's a good one. I'm gonna try to think about my own freedom number here.
Yeah, man. And it's something where, like, at least for me, when I was working, I knew I needed $3,000 a month to cover basic living expenses, travel, like whatever. It wasn't a crazy amount. I think a lot of people, like Tim, I'm sure if you ask them how much money you want to make, everyone says $10,000 a month. It's kind of like when you ask someone, like, pick a number between 1 and 10, and everyone says 7. Everyone says 10,000, but if you actually do the math, the amount you need to cover your living expenses and basic bills is a lot lower, right? And I think that's probably the most important number, because once you get that, you have so much optionality. Then you could do what you actually want to do.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, that's fantastic. Can you talk a little bit about the competitive landscape and, the key differentiators? You've obviously already hit on a few, but maybe just a bit more.
Yeah, sure. So we focus on 2 niches. One's residential cleaning, and the other is Airbnb turnovers. So when I launched back in 2013 to 2015 for my own location, that was when the Airbnbs just started coming up. If you remember back in the day, people were kind of house hacking. You lease a place, you sublease in the Airbnb, and you make the spread. Since then, that market's gotten very sophisticated. There's private equity money, there's real estate funds, there's people doing it on a massive, massive scale.
Yeah.
What has not gotten sophisticated in the meantime are cleaning services. It's an increase in demand for Airbnb and hotel standard cleaning, but not enough labor to actually do it. That's where we come in. So our software actually hooks into the host Airbnb calendar. Anytime there's a guest checkout, it'll automatically schedule cleaning with us, automatically assign the primary and backup cleaner. The cleaner does the checklist. It gets automatically sent over to the homeowner with supply reports, damage reports, anything a homeowner needs in terms of automation. So there is no other Airbnb cleaning franchise that exists. We're the only ones doing it. I think big reason for that is a lot of these franchises in the cleaning space started 20 years ago, right before this even existed. So we use a lot of tech, a lot of automation to be the go-to person or the go-to company for Airbnb turnovers.
And I've got to imagine that that's a pretty good recurring revenue stream, as far as I assume people are checking in and out of these Airbnbs relatively quickly.
Absolutely. So we focus on residential as well as Airbnbs. If you look at the revenue across the board, it's probably about 50-50 residential and Airbnbs. And that helps ease up some of the seasonality you might experience. But a regular home maybe gets cleaned on average 1 to 2 times a month. The Airbnb could be 4 to 10 times per month. It's a massive amount more volume.
Yeah.
So you really just need a small amount of Airbnbs on a recurring basis, and you have a sizable business.
Yeah, and I assume if you find the right owners, they probably own multiple properties, so it probably doesn't take a whole lot of, if you find the right person and they like your service, you can probably scale that pretty quickly. So that's awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if just Tim, basic math, I always love running through this with people. If, a normal cleaning is, let's say, $200 and the Airbnb turns over 5 times in a month, right? That's $1,000 in revenue per month per property. So to reach $100,000 in revenue for the year, you only need 8 properties to do that, right?
Yeah.
It's a very, very small amount of the market because it's heavily recurring.
Yeah. No, fantastic. Makes a lot of sense. In terms of who you guys are actually looking for, what's an ideal candidate? I know you said you can sort of start this as a side hustle. Do you have people who sort of run this semi-absentee? What does it look like?
Yeah, I always get confused with the word semi-absentee in the franchise world. I feel like they like throwing it around, and I'm always wondering, what does that even mean?
I feel like it means a lot of different things to different people.
Yeah, it's kind of a buzzword. So the terms I like to use is you absolutely can start it as a side hustle. You probably need at least 20 hours per week to get it to the scale that you actually want. Obviously, if you have less time, it'll just grow less slow, but I always recommend at least 20 hours a week. The goal is for you to get it to full-time ownership of it, right? A lot of it is based off of my experience. You can start this business model as a side hustle. A lot of franchisors don't want you to do something on the side because they want your full attention to it for good
Mm-hmm.
reason, right? They want you to grow as
Mm-hmm.
fast as you can. If you have more time devoted in the business, you'll probably grow faster. My philosophy is helping the 9 to 5ers escape, or helping people who maybe they want to get into the business, but they're a little bit nervous about it, de-risk what they're doing. How do you do that? You keep your day job temporarily and you plan your escape. And that's what we're doing and MaidThis. And that's why we allow for side hustlers.
Makes a lot of sense. In terms of the overall investment, like how much cash do I need in order to open one of these?
Yeah, the initial franchise fee right now is 39,000 for the upfront fee. After that, it's a pretty lean business model, honestly. Almost all of your money after that's going to be marketing. We do all the
Mm,
tech stuff, the online stuff. You're just going to spend money on ads. But remember, no vehicles, no office space, no crazy amount of overhead. The recession hits, you're okay. There's a lot of variable cost here. So all in, people are probably spending 50 to 60,000, including that initial franchise fee in the first handful of months.
yeah, and I think that is, considerably lower. You'd probably know better than me than some of the other cleaning franchises out there where maybe they have, an office space or whatnot. But how much is the spread there?
I've never seen a franchise under $100,000 all in.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, we are definitely a low cost franchise. It's a lean operation, and like I said, my belief is that a lot of these franchise systems operate in the way that was useful 20 years ago. They just haven't evolved, right? Tech moves
Mm-hmm,
really fast.
mm-hmm,
It's hard to change a large behemoth of an organization that fast.
mm-hmm. Talk to us about what a day in the life of a franchisee actually looks like.
Hmm. Yeah, honestly, I think it differs per franchise location. Um, I will say, let's say you start your day, you're probably going to check Slack. We use Slack for all internal communication in terms of our franchise support, but also franchisees use that with their team. Probably
Mm,
check Slack and you'll probably check up on the jobs which you've already scheduled. Right. So maybe you have a handful of jobs in terms of cleanings. Um, After the jobs are done, either you or someone on your team will probably call the client and say, "Hey, how'd everything go?" You'll probably take some calls in terms of getting new sales. So picking up the phone, closing the sale with the phone sales script that we match you up with. You'll probably do some online marketing to try to get more leads coming in from both cleaners as well as customers. And you kind of rinse and repeat that. And we help you
mm,
actually place your first remote team hire. So my team, for example, in MaidThis Los Angeles, we're across 8 different countries. Everyone is remote. And
mm,
the reason is because now with technology, if you have a call, you could route it to the team in South Africa or the team in Latin America and have them pick up the calls for a local customer. So we help you place that person for you as well. So a typical franchise owner might be focused on managing that person, helping train them, looking at stats in terms of what's the close rate, how can I improve this. So I'd say at the beginning, a lot of marketing and sales is what the focus is, and as they evolve, things become a little bit different as well.
mm. So if I'm trying to hire a maid, um, like, can you talk to us about like how that process works? Like, is it I go on Zoom and I interview them on Zoom, or how do I make sure that this is like a qualified person?
Yeah, I'll be honest, with any home service business, the hardest part is labor. I don't care what
Mm-hmm.
anyone tells you. For us, it's not getting customers, it's always going to be the cleaner side. But
Mm,
that's how it is. That's just the nature of the beast, and that's how it's always been. We do have a pretty good process for this. We call it the 5 step cleaner recruiter process. So we put them through an exact funnel, which we teach franchisees. It could start with an initial call. It would go into a video call. And there's a very specific script of things to ask them and have hoops for them to jump into. It might go to some sort of test job. Then it would go into an onboarding phase. But each piece of this, the most important thing is tracking the data, right? And that's what we really focus on is what percent of people go from job ad to first phone call? What percent of applicants go from first phone call to second phone call
mm,
ongoingly? And we have
mm-hmm.
benchmarks that we track. And that way franchisees know that they should be in between these KPIs. If they're in between them, they're doing a good job. And if not, they know exactly where to improve as well. So that's the funnel we use. And it's an ongoing process, kind of iterative process as well.
Got it. Got it. In terms of just general, potential here, like what's the ceiling as far as, what's possible with this business? I know you're
hmm
not allowed to say certain things if it's not in the FDD, but is there any just high level comments you're able to provide on, maybe the personal success you've had or or any other statements?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll even speak for my location in LA. Around 2019, we hit our highest revenue, which is around $2 million in revenue. Again, fully remote, fully dispersed team. I was traveling pretty aggressively that year as well. After that was COVID, and we're probably settled around like 1.2, 1.3 steady state. I probably work in my corporate business about less than 5 hours a week. So that's at least internally what has been possible and what a lot of people
Mm,
aspire to. I would hope our franchisees get there way faster than me. I made so many dumb mistakes that franchisees don't have to make anymore. So that's a goal, is just speed up the process and time collapse as much as we can.
fantastic. Anything else that I haven't, touched on here that you want to make sure people understand about the business?
No, I'd say if you're interested, reach out to Tim. I have a podcast called the Remote Local Podcast. Feel free to check that podcast out. Make sure I'm not a weirdo. Make sure you actually get all your questions answered. But feel free to reach out to Tim. Check out our website, MaidThisFranchise.com, and you can learn a bit more about us as well.
Awesome. Fantastic. Well, really appreciate your time here, Neel. It was great.